When we started researching for this video, we were planning a pretty straightforward story about a company that makes good chairs. We did not realize that we were dealing with a company that changed the way millions of people around the world interact with their work and living environments. Now, maybe you don't recognize the name Herman Miller, but I would be shocked if you didn't recognize at least some of the designs that this company has put out over the last 100 years. Herman Miller products have been seen in the New York's Museum of Modern Art. They've been ranked 23 times as the most admired company in the furniture industry by Fortune magazine. And there is literally a whole world of literature all about the company and its design principles. And so we've decided to make not one, but 3 videos about this company. We're starting with, of course, the story of Herman Miller. Herman Miller began in 1905 as Star Furniture Company, which produced, quote, high-quality, traditional-style bedroom suites. After surviving the First World War, in 1923 it was bought out by Herman Miller under the persuasion of his son-in-law, D.J. Dupree. Yes, that's his real name. Dupree became the first president of the then-named Herman Miller Furniture Company. However, they were about to encounter what would be the biggest challenge of the company's existence, the Great Depression. Now, I don't know how much you know about the Great Depression, but it wasn't great. During the 1930s, the world witnessed what is often referred to as the greatest economic crisis in human history, where a third of the banks failed. The stock market lost 90% of its value, and many countries spun into chaos with rampant business closures, unemployment, and homelessness. Believe it or not, having to wear masks and stay inside for the last 2 years is actually not that big of a deal in comparison to that. There were over 20,000 companies that went bankrupt in the US alone during this time, and the businesses who did survive barely scraped by. The companies that did survive did so because of their ability to adapt to change, and Herman Miller was no exception. Before the Great Depression, Herman Miller mostly focused on traditional high-end furniture, which, as you might be able to guess, wasn't especially popular during the Depression when people didn't really have money to eat, let alone money for a $12 walnut dresser. This is where Gilbert Rode entered the picture. This New York designer convinced Dupree to start focusing on stuff people actually wanted, furniture suited for the changing needs and lifestyles of Americans at the time. This foundation kept the company afloat until after World War II, when the design and beauty of what is known as Herman Miller today came to really shine. The modern Noguchi coffee table marks the beginning of architecturally relevant furniture in North America. Seriously, look at this thing. It's pretty awesome. Despite that it was released first back in 1948, the design is still going strong 74 years later, having inspired a great many copycats throughout the years. This was probably the spark of what went on to be known as mid-century modern style, born out of a post-war desire to have affordable, accessible furniture that was still comfortable and aesthetically pleasing. So during the 1950s especially, companies began experimenting with materials and styles to suit these needs. The mid-century became a time of invention and creativity, with art and furniture blending and becoming each other at the same time. And today you see mid-century modern furniture becoming popular again. I mean, honestly, people are hawking this stuff online like it's about to become illegal. I am actually personally guilty of falling for the charm of these old classic pieces. Just last year, I bought a admittedly expensive set of 4 chairs for our dining room table, and haters gonna hate, but they look amazing. Herman Miller was among the first to embrace this new style, and the company kind of became synonymous with the mid-century modern style in its heyday. Many of those designs back then are still familiar today, as we've mentioned. Probably most notably though is the Eames lounge chair, which was originally released back in 1956 and is still in production in 2022. But of course, not everything from this period ends up being commonplace, like Herman Miller's famous marshmallow chair, which looks amazing, but understandably didn't last the test of time.
And while it's not anything you want to sit on for a long, long time, it is really a piece of art.
But overall, the modernist movement shaped the way that we do furniture to this day. Now, it's normal for furniture to be made out of things like steel, molded plywood, and plastic. But back then, this wasn't really the case before Herman Miller popularized these new materials. So Herman Miller survived the Great Depression, 2 world wars, and just the average everyday trials of being a business in the competitive furniture market, but they weren't unchanged during that time. See, part of what we love about these legacy brands is the heritage that supports and influences their choices as a company. Some lose sight of the lessons of the past and get caught up in the trends of today. We've made a few videos about this in the past, but it seems that Herman Miller has taken the human and environmental and artistic experiences of the last 100 years to make their business better across the board. See, just like the angular practicality of mid-century modern furniture convinced me to buy 4 chairs for my living room today, Herman Miller has been in the environmental game before it was cool too. Most companies today have to at least fake being kind of eco-friendly in order to retain customers. But this wasn't the case back in the early 90s when Herman Miller was doing stuff like, I don't know, helping found the US Green Building Council, replacing endangered rosewood with more sustainably sourced materials, not to mention winning a plethora of environmental achievement awards. They're like that annoying friend who's like perfect, honestly, and like they're good at everything and they're actually a great person, you know? It's like, come on, Herman.
Herman.
They didn't even have Greta Thunberg breathing down their neck to do any of this stuff. They just did it because it was like the right thing to do. And it's not just back then, like they keep winning awards for these efforts. Like these are just their environmental awards. It just keeps going and going and going and going. We get it. You're amazing. Like calm down, you know? What is really inspiring is to see how those actions are now being manifested today. This drive that we see in Herman Miller to innovate and lead has forced them to rethink the way that they do business entirely. And right now, they are working towards what is known as a circular economy. Many and most businesses today operate in a very linear fashion, which means resources are extracted, products are made with those resources, and then eventually they're thrown out. Now, for obvious reasons, I would hope this isn't the most sustainable business model, especially when we live on a planet with finite resources. That's pretty simple math, I think. But in a circular economy, nothing is waste. Instead of chucking things when we're done with them, we repair, repurpose, or recycle, making the most of our resources by reintroducing them back into the system. And this isn't a fringe idea anymore. I mean, we've seen and talked about this in the past with Apple, for example, who has adopted aspects of this model by salvaging gold and other materials from old iPhones. And IKEA is trialing furniture rentals in Europe. Honestly, we make awesome videos. Like, I know that you're watching this one right now and you're enjoying it and I'm interrupting you, so I'm sorry. But I think when you're done this one, head down to the description and you'll see those other 2 videos. And I think they're amazing. And maybe you watch those and you think they're great, or maybe you're already convinced and I'm just, talking too much. So, consider hitting that subscribe button if you're liking what you're seeing, and then we can do this every Wednesday. Wouldn't that be awesome? Okay, sorry, we'll go back to the video now. Herman Miller seems to be embracing this philosophy wholeheartedly, but let's be honest, we're getting this from their website, so we have to take it with a grain of salt. But here's an example that we thought was kind of cool. Say your company has like 30 chairs that you don't need anymore. You can contact Herman Miller and they'll help you take care of the rest by getting your chairs to a, quote, deserving nonprofit. And here's the thing, they don't even care if these chairs are Herman Miller products, or even if it's furniture at all. You got a rogue box of paper clips from their fiercest competitor, they'll take care of that for you. Maybe you have a weird smelling beanbag chair with a stain on it. That's not a problem. Hey, maybe you even got an Eames Lounge chair that's made completely out of Jell-O. All of this and more, they'll take right off your hands. They're like a regular, handyman service, just coming in and cleaning up the trash. But honestly, this isn't actually the best scenario because often these nonprofits are underfunded and overwhelmed and could easily just not be capable of dealing with 30 random chairs delivered at their doorstep. Ideally, we would love to see these materials be reintroduced back into the Herman Miller supply chain, which is where they seem to be going next. Since the early 2000s, they've been slowly adopting cradle-to-cradle principles into their production. Cradle-to-cradle, or C2C as it's known, is all a part of this circular economy plan. We've seen this with the recent launch of their newest version of the Aeron chair. Herman Miller received their first cradle-to-cradle V3 silver certification. This chair uses 50% recycled materials, including ocean-bound plastic. But perhaps more importantly, Herman Miller products like this one are just really well made. They're built to last in the first place, so they don't have to get reconstituted because you don't want to throw the thing out in the first place. Unlike that, $10 IKEA table. In fact, you can buy replacement parts for almost anything on this chair, which I don't think you can say about many office chairs. Now, of course, we're fangirling pretty hard here, but Herman Miller is not perfect. Most of their products today are not cradle-to-cradle certified, and some of their innovations in the past have had some really negative impacts on millions of people. And this is something we're going to be talking about in a future episode as well. But even with all their mistakes, past and present, it's kind of hard to get mad at them. Partially because they're so charming and good looking, but also because they have something that most corporations today totally lack, and that's conviction. Companies like Apple and North Face, just to name a few of the other companies we've covered in other videos, have done okay things for the people and the planet, sure, but only when it's profitable. Herman Miller president DJ Dupree once said, "In the long run, businesses and business leaders will be judged, not by their profits or their products, but by their impact on humanity." That sounds a little bit like he's giving a presidential speech or something, but in this case, it seems like Dupree was right. Herman Miller is now a multi-billion-dollar company, and they got to that place not by choosing just the bottom line to satisfy shareholders, but by choosing to impact humanity in a positive way. Whether that's by tailoring ergonomic chairs to the needs of office workers, or reimagining healthcare setups to better serve patients, or pushing for a more sustainable economy. Believe it or not, this is just the beginning of this story. So if you're interested in seeing parts 2 or 3 in this whole extravaganza, please consider hitting that subscribe button because we're excited to share them with you. And of course, thank you to everybody who has already subscribed to this channel. We've grown a ton in the past couple of months and we're really excited about it. So if you are here, of course, we'll see you next Wednesday. Bye everyone.